God's Wisdom for a Fair and Just World by Dr. Jim Richards. Chapter 5. Why We Don't Want to Perceive. The Hebrew language of the Bible presents incredible insight into the concept of perception. Some are not willing to hear because they are not willing to obey. Pride, arrogance, and personal opinions blind others. Finally, some don't perceive because it would require them to change. They choose willful ignorance. And pretend they don't know. Regardless of the subtleties, these three categories are all rooted in selfishness and pride. The Hebrew words for hear and obey are a continuum. There's no difference between the two. The idea behind this word implies we are unable to hear, i.e., perceive from God what we would not be willing to obey. Since hearing and perceiving occurs in the heart, we must realize once we determine we want something, we harden our heart to anything that might prevent us from obtaining it. Of course, some are so sure they are right that their ego will not let them realize the truth incongruent with what they have chosen. Jesus explained that insisting we see makes us blind. John 9:41. The last category is those who close their eyes lest they should understand and change. Matthew 13:15. They don't want healing from their corruption and perversion. The Lord is our shepherd. He never stops attempting to lead us. However, he cannot lead us where we are unwilling to go, but we are without excuse. Every human being on the earth realizes that hurting others is wrong. Every person who owned a slave knew it was wrong. Every doctor or nurse that has aborted a baby knows it's wrong. Every murderer knows what he or she does is evil and wrong. However, like a blister that grows into a callus, if they continue in their evil long enough, their heart grows hard and insensitive, but God is still speaking. The religious leaders of Jesus' day falsely implied that they would believe his teaching if only he would provide a sign. This request was more than ironic, considering he had just miraculously fed thousands with 7 loaves of bread and a few fish. The significance of his response often goes unnoticed. Quote, "You know how to discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times." Matthew 15:32 and 16:4. They had already seen signs and wonders that proved the legitimacy of his claims. Moreover, Jesus performed the 4 messianic miracles, which was the religious leaders' acid test by which they were to recognize the Messiah. Why, after all the signs and wonders, would they continue to request further verification? Simple. They didn't want his message to be true. They didn't want the Messiah to disrupt their way of life and business. The religious leaders had a corrupt system providing them with wealth and power. Jesus' morals, values, and ethics would challenge the very systems by which they fulfilled the lust of their flesh. Jerusalem's religious and political leaders may have suffered from the same normality bias syndrome that causes millions of Jews to lose their life in Nazi Germany. The normalcy bias, or the normality bias, is a cognitive bias that leads people to disbelieve or minimize the threat. There were several possible reasons intellectual people will ignore a massive threat. Number 1. It is a problem that is so overwhelming that to admit it would be more than one could bear. Number 2, it is so far beyond the boundaries of our normal, it cannot be cognitively perceived. Number 3, It threatens to deprive us of the way we get what we want out of life. And number 4, the overwhelming fear of the unknown. We are in a much more dire situation today than the religious leaders of Jerusalem. The Bible describes what we will soon face as the worst tribulation in the world's history, Mark 13:19. Nearly every generation of Christians has believed that theirs was the last. However, they were interpreting end-time prophecies based on regional events. We are the first generation to see specific prophecies fulfilled across the globe. The reasons why any believer should be surprised by these global anomalies are all hollow excuses. Jesus warned these times would come. He explained how and why they would come. He told us how to know when they had begun. Jesus even explained the political ideology they would employ to overthrow the governments of the world. His word also taught how we could prevent these times from coming. He made sure we would know the signs which would reveal this destructive season, so they would not take us unaware. Yet, we, like the Jews of Jerusalem and Nazi Germany, manufactured excuse after excuse to justify rejecting his word and our responsibilities. We pretend to be ignorant of the magnitude of the problem. The body of Christ could have prevented all devastation. The good news is we can still act to diminish the carnage in our generation. We can create a just and fair world. This book explains how, in straightforward and easy to understand language. It all starts with reading the signs.